Hey everybody, it's Patrick Huey with Victory Independent Planning, and welcome to Wednesday, otherwise known as
Hump Day! Yeah!
Yeah, that's right. It's Hump Day. And this is Victory's virtual workshop where we're creating confidence and clarity for your financial life. Now, I have a client, we're going to call him Mike, who came to me recently with a variety of stock incentive plans that his employer offers. And he wanted to make sense of the risks he was taking and the tax consequences of any other strategy other than holding on to them and waiting. So let's take a look today at the basics of one type of incentive that he got. In future weeks, we'll look at some others, and those are restricted stock units. Okay, first step, you must, once you are granted any type of employer benefit, read the offering document from your employer. I got his, and we reviewed it together. And understanding the topics involved in the key stock plan documents will help you make the most of any restricted stock or restricted stock unit grants. We'll talk about the differences there and prevent costly potential mistakes. Let's start off with 10 questions to consider with RSUs, restricted stock units, and then I'll get back to my story about Mike. So number one, first question to ask yourself is, do I have a grant of restricted stock, or do I have a grant of restricted stock units? Well, what's the difference? Restricted stock is granted, and at the time of issue, it is then held in escrow. You have voting rights, you pay Social Security and Medicare tax at vesting, and you pay income tax at vesting. You have no deferral available, but you do get the right to dividends on those stocks. Whereas with RSUs, you receive vesting on a schedule, typically. You don't have voting rights until you actually have exercised. Your Social Security and Medicare taxes are paid again at vesting. Your income tax is paid at share delivery, and you have the potential to defer some of those taxes, maybe if correctly elected. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. And you don't have rights to dividends. However, some companies may provide dividend equivalents if they are so inclined. We'll cover that as well in a second. Okay, so first question, what do I have? Second question, is formal acceptance of this grant required? What happens if I don't accept the grant before it vests? Well, again, you need to go back and check your grant agreement form that the company uses to grant you any type of equity awards. Grant agreements can be in the form of printed certificates or letters, or these days, online documents. Alert. Think about this. You may need to formally accept the grant with a printed or an online signature. And if you don't, you may forfeit that grant, essentially leaving money on the table. Don't be that person. Okay, third question. What is the vesting schedule? So a vesting schedule is a time-based, either a graded or cliff vesting, meaning either you work for 3 to 5 years and everything gets vested at once, or you get a portion that vests over that 3 to 5 year period. First one's a cliff, second one is graded. Number 4, is vesting based on the duration of employment from the grant date, or is it on performance goals? So even after the shares are paid out for meeting the pre-established performance goals, the shares can then include some time vesting rules as well that require continued employment. So you might have a common performance target, and these are market-oriented or company-oriented based on internal corporate goals relative to competitors. So like total share return or earnings per share, sales, return on assets, return on equity, yada, 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 could be the performance trigger in these grants. So know what you have and know what you have to do in order to get it. Number 5, what would happen to the vesting of my grant if I were to leave, lose my job, die, become disabled, retire, or become retirement eligible? So basically, know what's going to happen to your grants if you're not around when it's time to exercise, or you're not part of the company when it's time to do that. What I'll tell you is that about 97% of companies are going to terminate your awards when you're terminated for cause. About 2/3 will terminate if you are terminated involuntarily. If you resign, it's about 95%. If you die, about 60%. If you're disabled, it's about 52%. And if you retire, it's about 32% of companies that will actually continue to offer participation to you. Question 6, when the shares vest, what account will they appear in? Well, before the vesting date, when the restriction lapses and the shares are released, you'll have to open an account with the brokerage firm or transfer agent that your company designates. Make sure you do that. If you have any equity compensation at all and you plan on participating, get on it. Make sure the account is there. You don't want to be scrambling at the last minute to have an account to receive these shares. Number 7, does the company offer a choice for the tax withholding, or does it hold back shares to pay the taxes? So taxes on this compensation income are withheld at vesting, and they either are going to require cash at vesting or they'll sell stock to cover. So know which one is going to happen and make sure that you understand the taxation that is involved. It's going to be federal income tax. Typically, this is taxed at a flat 22%, unless your company uses the supplemental rate, which is 37% for folks with over $1 million in compensation. There's also going to be Social Security and Medicare taxes, and potentially state and local when applicable. So know what you are in for when the tax man visits you after exercise. Number 8, with RSUs, can I defer the delivery of the shares at vesting? Well, the ability to defer the delivery of RSU shares and thus the ordinary income taxes at vesting depends on whether your company has a provision for this in its stock plan. Okay, so deferral is not permitted with standard restricted stock grants. If you just get restricted stock, you're paying the tax. But you may be able to defer if you're getting RSUs and if your company has set it up correctly. Number 9, if my company pays dividends to shareholders, will I get dividends on my restricted stock? If so, when? And what if I have a grant of an RSU instead? Well, usually restricted stock grants give you the same dividend. We talked about that at the beginning. You have dividend, voting, and other rights, just like any other shareholder in your company's common stock. Shares of restricted stock are issued to you and are outstanding in your name from the time of grant, though typically you can't transfer them until the vesting date. That's that escrow period. And 74% of the company's employees are eligible to receive dividend equivalents in RSUs, though. Okay, so the company is going to create some cash type benefit to add to your shares on top of the potential price appreciation in order to make up for the fact that in the RSU, you're not getting that dividend like a normal shareholder would. Okay, 10th, what would happen to my restricted stock in a corporate acquisition or a merger? Well, the treatment of the restricted stock or restricted stock units in the acquisition or merger is going to depend on the deal terms and on what is allowed or limited under your stock plan and grant agreement. So it's probably going to require some reading. Look for the details in the finalized M&A agreement and your company's communication materials, and good luck because they're going to be lengthy. Okay, let's go in and take a look at a checklist that I went through with my client, Mike. Okay, when we went in and looked, do we need to review how the RSUs work? Yeah, we did. We needed to go back into the documents. We knew the general basics, of course, but the devil's in the details, and the details were incorporated into that employer's grant term document. So do we need to confirm the conditions of vesting? Well, it was graduated vesting. We knew that. And the vesting triggers should be closely monitored. We knew that as well. We are actually tracking all of his RSUs, as well as other stock options, which we'll talk about later in another episode. Does your plan allow you to defer distribution of shares? His did not. Do you need to review what you will receive when your RSUs vest? Yep, we were stock settlement. We knew that they were going to sell stock to cover the taxes, and they were going to withhold 22% plus state tax. Does the company accrue or pay dividend equivalents? In his case, they do not. Do you need to review how termination of your employment would affect this? We weren't too worried about that. He's fairly young and fairly established at this company, so that wasn't something we needed to worry about just at this moment. Investment issues. This is where we really focused on with him. Do shares of your company's stock, along with any unvested RSUs, make up a significant portion of your investment portfolio? Yes, was the answer. And the issue here was that he's getting or participating in a stock fund inside of his 401k that owns company stock as well. And right now, that's a little bit over 10% of his total portfolio. So that's a little bit more risk than we want to take every time these RSUs become available. So in his case, what we decided to do, there are no blackout, or there are company restrictions, blackout windows, but once we're outside of those, we wanted to basically engage in exercise and sell of these RSUs so that we can diversify them and not continue to add to the about 10% that he's already got in company stock. If we weren't able to do that for whatever reason, or we didn't want to, and we started to carry more than 10% in company stock, well, that's a time when we would look at downside protection. Do you need downside protection while you're holding your company shares? We could buy put options. Broad market could work, or we could buy put options against the particular stock, depending on how liquid it is. And obviously, it's got to be a public company in order to do that. All right, moving on to tax issues. Do you need to understand the tax consequences of the grant of your RSUs? If anybody checks no on that, I would be super suspicious. You do need to understand the tax implications and the tax consequences of the grant and the vesting, okay? And ultimately, the sale of those shares as well. Do you want to reduce your income tax liability? No, I don't. Well, of course you do, but you actually may not be able to. If you're already maxing out your 457, 401k, that type of thing, and you're already bunching, the tax situation may just be the tax situation. And that's actually the case in Mike's situation as well. Do you need a plan for tax withholding in the year of vesting? Well, yeah, of course you do. Once you get through the tax planning piece and you know that you're going to have a tax liability, well, then we need to make sure you have the cash available or that you're withholding elsewhere in order to make up for any lack of withholding once the grant is made and exercised. Does your company offer the IRC 83I election to defer the recognition of income for up to 5 years after your RSUs vest? This could be something that is written into your company's plan. It wasn't in this case. But if you're out there listening, take a look and know if you can defer. Reasons to defer? Well, if you're going to have a lower income year potentially within those 5 years, you might be able to save yourself some taxes. Otherwise, it probably doesn't make sense to do it. Do you need help determining your cost basis in any shares acquired at vesting? He did not. Do you need help determining your holding period for shares acquired through your RSU plan? Again, he didn't, because we've been tracking this through our internal software. Do you need help understanding the tax consequences of the sale of shares acquired through your RSU plan? Yes, absolutely. And that is part of the overall tax planning piece. Okay, we have to really take a step back here and say, not only is this all part of a retirement plan and a retirement income plan, but that moves into an investment plan and a tax plan. And if all those things are working together, it makes the management of restricted stock and RSUs a heck of a lot easier because you're dealing with data and not, taking shots at a dartboard in the dark. Some miscellaneous issues to keep in mind. Assess your employer's future equity value and long-term viability. In Mike's case, he works for a Fortune 500 company. We weren't super, concerned about the viability or his term at the company. Is there a risk that your company will be acquired in the future? In his case, no. That may be different for some people. So know what you're getting into and know what the provisions are if you are acquired, excuse me. Do you have future financial goals that your RSUs or shares could help to achieve? In his case, absolutely yes. It's all about retirement. And we needed to add that to the pot and the overall portfolio and get it diversified and under a managed investment plan. Need to address your RSUs in your estate plan or in a divorce? No. Does your a plan allow you to designate a beneficiary? In his case, it did not, but something to think about. And do you need to consider any state-specific issues? Yeah, he did. He's in a high-tax state, and it's something we needed to be aware of. So that's it for the checklist and for Mike's case. Remember, it's really about planning, and then it's about tracking your awards, understanding what the underlying stock is doing, and exercising when you have determined you should based on your overall planning. But remember, overall, being on that glide path towards retirement for and in retirement, that starts with what I call a SMART approach, making sure your sources of income, your medical and healthcare planning, advanced planning, risk management, and tax efficient strategies are all working together. And if you want a copy of this week's checklist, or you want to ask questions about this topic or any other topic in my Smart Approach to Retirement series, just email me. I'm at patrick@victoryindependentplanning.com. Once again, thanks for checking in, and I will see you next week.